So, hello everyone. Thank you, Rick, for joining me in this live stream. So you can say hi to all your followers because they are a lot right now. So people are connecting to the stream.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's good to connect once again, to my good friend from the far other side of the large ocean.
Yeah, of the ocean. So we are both into different areas. So, well, I introduced you all my followers in Italian. Yes, so Leslie maybe then can translate. So, ciao a tutti. Questa sera siamo connessi con Richard Pescatore, che è un collega medico di emergenza americano, da sulla parte, diciamo, verso New York, Filadelfia. E con noi abbiamo anche Leslie che ci aiuterà in eventuali traduzioni, perché questa è il primo tentativo, so this is the first attempt to speak both in English and in Italian, so to compare our educational system in medical education. So I guess my English will be like fine or enough to understand everything, because it's more than 1 year that I'm not in any English speaking countries, so it will be like hard for me to like stay on track, but we will try. So to everyone listening, you can comment. We will see all your comments and questions, and we will try to answer to all the questions that you wanna make. È giusto, Leslie? Ce la facciamo?
Perfection.
Okay. So, Rick, many Italian doctors and many Italian students want to know something more about the medical education process in the United States. So we hear many things about the medical system in the US and the medical education system, but really like picking things from social media or like in very different ways and not speaking to an American doctors, it's different. So let's try to explain how it works in my country and in your country, so we can compare. Like,
sounds like a good plan. Here in America, the medical education system, I think, is very different than other parts of the world. We head to medical school after 4 years of college, which we begin after high school. So after 4 years of high school, there's 4 years of college, followed by 4 years of medical school. And then upon graduation from medical school, you have the opportunity to enter residency for your clinical training before you're a board-certified physician.
Okay, so I think this is so different from the Italian system. So in our country, you have like 5 years of high school, or like the equivalent of high school, and then you can try to access the medical school with like a test. So there is a national selection, and you can apply, and if you are in a good position, you can enter the school. So you are matched to a university. All the universities are in the same network. So the Ministry of Education manage all this process. And then you can start this 6-year training with medicine and surgery, so both stuff. And I think there are a lot of differences during the training in pre-graduate level and postgraduate education. Is it correct? So what's happening in the US? You have like the DO title, and yes, we know you have DO and MD, so two different paths to reach the same system, so the same work basically.
It's very confusing, but here in the United States, after high school, you go on to college. And in college, you can study anything you want. There are many people who will study things that were classically thought of as pre-medical, things like biology or chemistry or physiology, but many other people study things that are completely different, such as the arts or engineering. I myself have my bachelor's college degree in aerospace engineering, which has really little to do with medical school. But as you near the end of college and decide that you want to move on to medical school, you really have to do one big thing. There's a test called the MCAT. It's fairly similar, I suspect, to your admissions test. Okay. And that score, combined with your college application, your GPA, your activities, is what you use to apply to either MD school or DO school, both of which are medical schools. And there are some slight differences in the approach to in how those two different degrees approach medicine. But ultimately, they are both 4-year schools. And when you graduate from them, you're able to get a license to be a practicing physician in the United States.
Okay, so I'll try to translate with Leslie for all our followers that I'm not sure everyone can get all the English, so I did this time. Allora ragazzi, praticamente Rick ci sta dicendo che si può studiare al college prima di entrare alla scuola di medicina in tantissimi come dire, corsi. Lui ha fatto ingegneria aerospaziale, da quello che ho capito, giusto Leslie? Praticamente si fa poi un test di ammissione a medicina e questo test è valido sia per le scuole di medicina osteopatica sia per le scuole di medicina classica e entrambi i percorsi poi durano 4 anni e le persone possono appunto fare l'ingresso a queste scuole e continuare il percorso di studi. Dopodiché, then what happened when you finish the 4-year medical school, and most important, what exactly you are going to study during the medical school? Because I think this is different between the Italian system and in general, also in Europe, the system is quite similar because each country has its own regulation, but all the regulation of each country need to be compliant with the European regulation. So the European regulation establishes a minimum of 5 years and 5,500 hours of both theoretical and practice training. So you have to do at minimum 5 years. In Italy, it's 6, the minimum. So we go above the minimum requirement of the European Union. And then you have like the postgraduate training, so and to complete all the process. But in the first 3 years, okay, you study like the basic sciences. So you start with chemistry, biochemistry, physics, biology, genetics, etc. And then starting at the 3rd year to the 6th year, you start the clinical approach. So I think it's like slightly more uniform for everyone, this kind of process. As per what I understood on your approach, you have the college where you can study or not study these topics, but you have to pass an exam. Is it correct?
Correct. And that exam does test many of the things that you mentioned, like chemistry and biology and physics. And when we talk about our flavor, our type of medical school, it's broken into 2 blocks of 2. The first 2 years of which are spent in theoretical medicine and biochemistry, physiology, and pathophysiology, where the second 2 years are spent in clinical rotations. But many of the courses that you discuss, biochemistry, chemistry, physics, while an individual doesn't necessarily have to study them as part of their college degree, they are prerequisites for admission to medical school, and all individuals must have taken those courses regardless of what their undergraduate degree is.
Okay. So in any case, you have to study and pass examinations. So all your exams what kind of exam do you have? Because I heard in the United States you usually have like a written test or a multiple choice test or something like that. And this is very different from the Italian system where each professor can decide both to make like a multiple choice test and or both oral discussion. So you can be examined in many ways. So.
Well, nearly all of our exams in the United States are written multiple choice exams. There are some exams that do have an in-person component, but a lot of those have actually been eliminated after the pandemic, as it was determined that they do not sort of meet the mission of the testing collaboratives. There is still a requirement for oral board exams following postgraduate training, but at this time, it's a relatively rare thing that in-person or oral exams are part of medical school.
Okay, so this board certification and this board exam seems to be very different from our system of specialty doctors. So this seems to me very different. So let's go on the postgraduate training. So you have to be a doctor in medicine, and then what's the path for a doctor?
After, in your final year of medical school, you decide what you want to specialize in as a physician, whether that be emergency medicine, surgery, vascular surgery, neurosurgery, whatever you decide that you want to specialize in.
On the very last year.
In your last year. You enter a process called the match, which is a large computerized process that joins together applicants and programs to send individuals to their graduate medical education program of choice. From there, you enter a residency program that's anywhere between 3 and 7 years long, and upon completion of residency and another test, you become a board certified physician in that specialty.
Okay, so I just downloaded the official residency matching video, so just the explanation, because in my country we had a lot of issue. So this year, for the equivalent of the national residency matching program, we had about 700 people that sued the Ministry of Education, and so everything was messed up. And now, after many months, everything went on the right path. But I want to show our followers, at least the Italian one, how it works using the official video of residency match, just to comment then, and I will explain how our system works. That it is a little bit confusing.
We call it the.
Okay.
The NRMP uses a computerized mathematical algorithm to place applicants into residency and fellowship positions. At NRMP, we call it the matching algorithm, as we use it to match applicants to their most preferred programs. The algorithm is applicant proposing, meaning it initiates placement of an applicant into a program based on the choices made on the applicant's rank order list, and not a program's rank order list. However, for a match to occur, both the applicant and program must rank each other.
Okay, so I'll stop the video just to ask you some questions. So applicant proposing means that doctor asks for some program in different hospitals around all the United States, and how many programs you can apply to. Oh, wait, because I have to remove this.
There we go.
Here we go. Okay, so because the audio was stopped.
It's an unlimited amount of programs that you can apply to. However, you do have to participate in an interview with each one of them. It used to be that was very prohibitive because you'd have to fly all over the country to interview at different programs.
So it's a physical interview.
Yes.
So you have to move all across the country.
Yes. But now with Zoom and everything done electronically, more people are applying to more programs.
Okay. So what's the average before COVID pandemic and before Zoom? What's the average number?
I would say before, I applied to, I think, 10 programs for a residency.
10 programs, 10 interviews. How long does it take to?
It's a many month-long process. 2 to 3 month-long process.
Okay, so you have to move, you have to spend a lot of money to move all around.
You fly all around. So many people will identify programs that are close to home or wherever they wish to live, and travel to many hospitals in the same region. So I live in the Philadelphia area of the United States. We have somewhere between 12 and 15 hospitals within driving distance.
So you can apply to all the closest. Yeah. Okay, good. So I will react to the stream.
Once started, the algorithm attempts to match each applicant to the applicant's first choice. If that can't be guaranteed, the algorithm will try to match the applicant to the second choice, and so on, until the applicant is matched or all choices have been exhausted. Let's run a match to see how it works. 5 applicants, Arthur, Sonny, Joseph, Latha, and Darius, and 3 programs, Mercy, City, and General, have submitted rank order lists. Each program has 2 openings. Starting with Arthur, we see he ranked only City. Because the algorithm is applicant proposing, it will attempt to match Arthur to City.
Okay, so I will remove. And so, Rick, because your letter, so then we will explain to all our followers, but because your letter was like lost, I don't know where, your letter, I'll introduce you the former Ministry of Health that want to thank you live for this. So, Giulia, hai il microfono chiuso.
Ok, adesso
Okay,
il
so
resto.
I introduce you Giulia Grillo, that was the former Ministry of Health that signed your letter, and so she
Thank
wanna thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
So she's
No,
now
yeah.
in Sweden, and that is so. Giulia, puoi parlare di pure, mi piace.
Ma il mio inglese non è granché, però se vuoi vado in inglese.
Ma ti traduciamo se vuoi, non è un problema.
No, I want to exit from my comfort zone, so I try to speak English even if I'm not good in this kind of language. But I don't have so many occasions to speak English, so you have to hear this kind of English. Just to thank you for your time and for your collaboration with Roberto. That was a very good advisor, si può dire advisor of the minister. So we were trying to change the point of view in Italy about the post degree come si dice, specialization, okay, training, and we were very near, but we don't know, perhaps in the future we can do something together also, not in the minister but in other situations. So I'm very sad that you didn't receive our letter, because it was very nice gift, I think, to for your collaboration. But now this is the moment in which I can say it directly to yourself. So thank you.
Thank you.
Grande Giulia, so.
And your English is wonderful.
Not so much, but
Okay.
I studied when I was a child. So.
Okay, no, so thank you, grazie Giulia, perché ci voleva proprio. So I was very upset for this letter was lost, and we were not anymore in the Ministry of Health in charge of the office, so I couldn't like fix that problem, so I was really it's nice. Allora, stavamo parlando del sistema delle specializzazioni, so I switched to Italian. E appunto voi sapete che anche con Giulia avevamo cercato di sistemare la cosa e, come dire, adesso cerchiamo di capire le differenze tra i sistemi di assegnazione delle persone nel sistema americano, che è anche il sistema canadese, perché adesso gli chiederò conferma, ma anche il sistema canadese utilizza lo stesso sistema rispetto a quello che abbiamo in Italia in particolare. So I'm gonna translate for you, Eric. So, as per what I've seen during my my time in the office, also the Canadian system is very similar to the US one. Is it correct? So,
Very similar.
yeah, very similar. So we can match many programs, and the difference, as per what I understood, is that the program doesn't define your title as specialist or best. After the training, you have to pass this board examination. Is it correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the similar things between pre-graduate training and postgraduate training is that you always have to study to pass exams, but at the end you have like this certification that is the USMLE and the board examination. Is it correct?
Correct.
Ok, quindi abbiamo praticamente due livelli. Le persone sia nel pre-laurea che nel post-laurea danno gli esami, superano la laurea o la specializzazione, diciamo il percorso di addestramento, di training per la specializzazione, però alla fine c'è sempre un ente terzo certificatore, che è nel primo caso l'USMLE e nel secondo caso questo board, quindi loro hanno le qualifiche di board eligible o board certified, per cui che tu esca da un programma, da una scuola DO, da una scuola MD, alla fine devi sempre superare lo USMLE. E se esci da una scuola di cardiologia, alla fine devi essere certificato come cardiologo facendo questo esame che... so the board certification need to be redone periodically?
Every 10 years.
Every 10 years, okay. So you are not specialist lifetime.
Yeah. You're special. No, you can lose your board certification if you don't get it every 10 years.
Ok, so you can lose your board certification. Giulia, hai il microfono sempre spento.
And during the 10 years, what happens?
You practice. You have yearly licensing requirements for continuing medical education that might affect your license, but otherwise you simply practice.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so you have like the system of continuous medical education that is mandatory?
Yes.
Okay, so Leslie is writing me in the private chat that she has some question for you. So, Leslie, feel free to...
No, I have two questions that I think might be of interest to all of our followers. Perhaps more of a personal nature. According to what you told us before, is you had a degree in aerospace engineering, and then you decided to go into medicine. I think it may be interesting for our followers to know what made you change your mind, because it is a 180-degree change. It's nowhere near, the field of medicine.
Very different. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was an aerospace engineer in the Navy and became an emergency medical technician, an EMT, on the ambulance, so that I could learn how to better take care of my fellow brothers and sisters in the Navy. And while I was taking that course, I fell in love with medicine, and I wanted to help other people. And so I decided then and there to become a doctor.
Okay. And the second one is
the same worldwide, because I was an EMT, or the equivalent of EMT, because we don't have any paramedic or EMT officially speaking, but I was in ambulance, and that's how medicine enter in your mind, and that's it.
The second question is probably in line with what Roberto wants to ask, or maybe later, but is, what was your reasoning behind going into the DO school rather than an MD school?
Sure. The MD versus DO difference has a lot of consternation and a lot of discussion surrounding it because it can be very confusing. But an MD versus DO are both fully licensed physicians in the United States and can practice any specialty of medicine or surgery. About 80% of doctors in the United States are MDs, and about 20% are DOs. DO stands for Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine. And I chose DO school for a number of reasons, one of which was that DO school approaches a patient from a perspective of helping that patient's own bodily processes heal them from the inside out. It's working with the body, as opposed to the allopathic or MD side of the house, where we think of as working against disease. So the osteopathic perspective is one of working alongside the body to heal it, whereas ostensibly the allopathic perspective is of working against disease. So I favored that former perspective, and that's why I became a DO.
Cerchiamo magari di tradurlo. Diciamo che sono due approcci diversi, per quello che ho capito, perché qua sto flippando un po'. Sono due approcci diversi, uno più allopatico, uno più olistico, da quello che ho capito. E è un po' come viene visto da noi, perché da noi la medicina osteopatica è un corso a parte, diciamo, non è integrato a medicina, può essere autonomo, e quindi l'osteopata, che non è un medico, o può non essere un medico, insomma, ha una figura un pochettino diversa. Quindi, so Rick, in our country, we don't have the DO as physician licensed Okay, so it's a different path, and it takes care only of some stuff, and it's not 100% regulated as per what I know. So there was a big debate in the past like 5 years, 5 to 7 years, with all these other non-medical professional. And so maybe in the future we can get deeper in this kind of differences. Okay, so but it's nice. So it seems that the DO has something above the MD, same medical education, but something more on the osteopathic side. Is it correct?
It's very, very similar. All differences have very much been erased over the past several years, to the extent that they are both, for all intents and purposes, paths to becoming a fully licensed physician.
Okay, so at the end, the final exam for everyone is the USMLE to be able to practice. Is it correct?
Correct.
So, as per what I know, the USMLE is a long process. So you have the step 1, the step 2 that is divided into sub exam. Is it correct?
Oh, that's been eliminated since the pandemic. Now it's just the one test.
Okay, so one test. So is clinical competence or clinical skill? Because
so the clinical knowledge still exists. The written perspective one still exists. The in-person clinical skills does not exist anymore.
Okay. So I'll explain in Italian. So l'esame USMLE era composto di 3 step, di cui il primo era il nostro esame di preclinica, quindi le scienze di base, con un approccio molto più pratico. Se andate a vedere i test, erano molto più legati all'applicazione pratica poi della medicina. Poi c'era lo step 2 che era diviso in 2 parti. Una era quella di conoscenze cliniche, e quindi teorica fatta scritta, e la seconda invece era quella di esame pratico, fatto con, credo, 12 simulatori, quindi 12 pazienti, e tu dovevi entrare in tutte queste 12 stanze, fare 12 visite, compilare 12 cartelle, e a quel punto, in base al risultato, venivi abilitato. So I'll back in English. So the old exam before COVID pandemic, on the practice point of view, was a simulation. 12, is it correct? 12 patient.
Correct, yes. It was a simulated patient encounters where you spoke with a number of fake patients with fake diseases and had to write fake clinical notes about that encounter. And it was graded. It had a greater than 98% pass rate, and was for many seen as a little bit of a barrier because everybody had to travel to one city to take it. It could mean flying from all over the country. And because it had such a high pass rate, it was not seen as an effective measure of clinical knowledge in any way.
Okay, so the 98 pass rate. Okay, so it seems to our licensing examination that changed last year. And so we remanaged. So before it was similar to the US one. We had a preclinical assessment, a clinical assessment, so both multiple choices. So 180 questions each one, if I well remember. And then 3-month practice. So one in family medicine, one in surgery, and one in like clinical setting, internal medicine setting. Giulia si è bloccata.
Massimo? Sì, Massimo. Ah, no, perché pensavo che volevo salutare la sorella di Massimo, Leslie, perché non ci conosciamo, tu capisci l'italiano. Yes, I want to say hello to Mrs. Baroni. This is the sister of my colleagues here in the Italian Parliament, so it's the first time that I can see her. No, just a question. Then I continue outside, so I can follow you just as a spectator. So, did you get your vaccine?
Oh yes, I have 2 doses of the Moderna vaccine. How about all of you?
Moderna. Okay. How is going the vaccination in America, in USA? How is going?
There are plenty of hurdles. We're working very hard to get everybody 65 years of age and older vaccinated as quickly as possible. And the Johnson vaccine was approved today. So
okay.
Yeah.
The first time.
yeah.
The first day. Okay,
How about
thank you.
Are
Thank you
guys
for
vaccinated?
Okay, so
Okay.
well, about vaccines. So you have, Julia, you have
No,
to.
just an information.
Yeah.
It's all right.
You have to know that Rick is in charge of the public health in Delaware.
Okay.
So it's,
Well, we have a big team, but I'm honored to be part of it. That's for sure.
But do you have the variant, the British variant? You too?
Yeah, British and South African variant has been identified in the United States as well.
Okay.
yeah, in my region right now, so today our index went on the red level, so we are locking down everything again, and so the vaccination process is slow here because we don't have enough vaccines. So well, let's keep in track. Ok.
Senti Roberto, allora io vi guardo da fuori, va bene? Vi saluto così torno con la famiglia. Ok, thank you. Bye bye Rick, bye bye Leslie. I can call you Leslie. Bye bye. See you the next time perhaps, I hope so. Bye bye Roberto.
Bye. Eccoci, so we will be back. Okay, no, wait. Okay. So let's continue. So we were on the USMLE. So as per what I heard, you can practice medicine after the second step of the USMLE, and then you can take the final step after or during residency. So is this license to practice until the third step locked, or is
you can obtain a postgraduate training license after you take step 2 of the USMLE and after you've graduated medical school, but not in most states. In every state it's different, but in most states you can't practice medicine with a license until you finish USMLE step 3, which happens about a year after graduating medical school. And then in some states, you can't practice medicine with a license until you finish several years of residency.
Okay, so it depends on the state. Okay, so this is interesting because all the time you hear from people from different parts of the United States that are quite big. So people say different stuff, so you don't match all the information together. So very good. So in our system, when you are licensed to practice, you are licensed. Okay, so you have to finish the medical school, you take the licensing examinations, and you are able to do almost everything in theory to practice in the public system. And in general, the reality is everywhere, but on the legal point of view, mostly in the public system, that is the 95% of the Italian healthcare system, you have to be specialized to practice anesthesiologists and nuclear medicine, so radiology. When you use radiation, you have to be specialized on this side. But in theory, you can do many other stuff with only the license to practice. And that's a very big difference with your system, I think, because you are more monitored and you are followed during the process. It seems that, well, it depends on the state, but it's good. So let's go on the economic point of view. How much it costs to be graduated in medicine in the United States, because the university system costs a lot.
Yeah. So the cost that it is to become a doctor depends on both college and medical school, where many people have to take on student debt to be able to get through school. For many people, they'll spend anywhere between $150,000 and $200,000 for college, and then an additional $150,000 to $200,000 for medical school as well. So I, for one, graduated from medical school with about $300,000 of student debt.
$300,000. Okay, this is a very different system. Leslie, I've seen you have a question, so you feel free to speak.
Yes, my question goes back to certifications and rules and regulations. In the United States, depends on the state that you're in, California versus Pennsylvania, etc. You cannot practice medicine unless you have a license that is established, okay, whether it's MLM3 and finish your residency, etc. So that is a must. But can you practice medicine without being board certified?
So that's a really great question. And the answer is, in theory, yes. In practice, it's extremely difficult. The reason being that if you lack board certification, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find a job. It's becoming increasingly difficult to get malpractice insurance that will cover you. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to get privileges at a hospital. So there are places in the United States where you can practice without a board certification, but they're becoming much rarer and fewer and further between.
Okay, so in theory you can practice, but of course it's difficult. Okay, so we have a question, but I'm not sure to understand the meaning. So, cosa intendi laurea per specializzazione? Se ce lo dici in italiano con una frase un po' più lunga, magari te la proviamo.
I think she's asking the student debt for specialization. And I can say that actually, when you enter your specialty training, you are paid. You're paid at a low reimbursement, and you don't make very much money, but you are actually paid as a resident, as a trainee in specialization.
Okay, so there is like a national level to be paid? Or
yeah, every resident, it varies slightly throughout the country depending on local cost of living and different the expenses of things. But generally, residents are paid about $50,000 a year.
$50,000. Okay, that's almost the double with the Italian system. Okay, almost the double. So we have a very different situation in Europe because each country has different systems. So the European regulation is like very adaptable to each situation. So in Germany, as example, you start working in a protected environment, but you work, so you are hired as all the other doctors. And after a number of years and a number of certificated procedures and trainings, etc., you get your title of specialist in. In Italy is all different. So in Italy, in theory, we should have a university school of specialization, and then we can have, as per European regulation, we can have also other places where get your title. But in the reality, only the university has a regulation. So there is legislation only on universities. So there is like a national residency matching program, but is completely different from the US one. So you have to take an exam, and based on your score, you can express some preference for type of specialty, so the type of school, anesthesia, emergency medicine, whatever, and the location, so in the north, in the south, or different universities. But you are like matched based on how many places are paid this year, and is the government that pays, or the national or the regional government that pays some, like, how can you, come puoi tradurre borsa di studio che in realtà è un contratto di formazione?
It's a stipend. It's a stipend.
Okay, did you catch?
No, how do you get paid the stipend?
Yeah, you get paid a stipend, which is, I would say, not a lot of money. Is that correct?
Yes.
Not at all. So it's like for 5 years, you get like 25,000 euros per year. So it's not much. And the problem is that you have a lot of blocked ways to work. So you can't do anything else or almost anything else. Now during the pandemic, because of the lack of physician, they are like enlarging all the pathway you can follow to earn some money and to work. But right now, basically, they are almost slaves in their program. So they are. So, and I know that in the US, you don't have any specific regulation on the working time. Is it correct? So you have shift of 24 hours or 48 hours or something, as we hear this from our side. So I'm not sure it's correct or it's
There
real.
are regulations that were implemented a few years ago,
Okay.
where you're not supposed to work more than 80 hours a week, I believe. But that's routinely flouted. And very often in residency, you work far more than 80 hours in a week.
80 hours. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Okay, so here the European regulations, so this is mandatory. So it is a regulation that all the states can't decide to discharge. So you can't work more than 48 hours. This not only for doctors, but for everyone in the European Union. So
that's very different. That's
very, very different. So that's.
I work far more than that now as an attending. That's
okay. More than, well, me too, but I'm a private practitioner, so I work in the emergency system for my full-time position, but then I have my practice, so I do many other stuff, and so I work above the 48 hours, but not as an employee.
Gotcha.
So this is interesting. So all doctors are, when you practice in a hospital, are you employee or you are a contractor, or is there any regulation that decide which kind of contract you have to do? You have to.
It's different. You can be one of either, and sometimes there are large staffing groups that will staff hospitals and emergency departments. There are also small groups that will staff emergency departments. It's very different models.
Okay.
But ultimately, in the United States, your healthcare is tied to your occupation. And so there's a larger desire for people to be employees so that they get healthcare through their employer as well.
Okay, so this open the last topic I want to ask you, because we have a very different healthcare system. So all you heard by our side is because we have a regulation that for the public health system is basically free for everyone. When you're born in Italy, not in Europe, because the European Union has many different healthcare systems, but in our country since 1978, we choose this universalistic coverage. So we pay through taxes. And then when you're born, you have this the equivalent of your social security number, okay, that is linked to your healthcare coverage. So you can go in whatever hospital for emergency care, and you don't have to pay anything. You only have to say, okay, I have my card, and if you don't have it, it doesn't matter usually. So sometimes in the administration will take care of the reimbursement with your country, etc. But you can access all the hospital without any kind of problem for all the essential level of assistance. So there is a regulation, a national legislation that each year review the list of surgery, prevention, everything is included in this. You can choose to have an insurance. You are not obliged to. You can choose to have something more or the private practice, basically. So you can access in both ways. And it's a lot cheaper. I've been in the US and I've seen the difference of prices is really, really different. And so if you are a doctor, your healthcare coverage is linked to your employee status.
Everybody in America, your healthcare coverage is linked to your employer status.
Okay. Because we know that you have also Medicare, Medicaid, and some other system for child, I think, that are public coverage.
Yeah, so there are public coverage options in the United States. Medicare for those who are 65 and older, Medicaid and CHIP programs for children for individuals who are below a certain income level, which is typically marked at 200% of the poverty line. But again, that changes from state to state. But for the vast majority of Americans, health insurance comes through an employer. You can buy health insurance independently, of course, as well, through what's called the marketplace as part of the Obamacare Affordable Care Act. But ultimately, because your health insurance is so intimately linked to your employer in the United States, it does drive an increased desire to be what we call a W-2 full-time employee.
Okay, good. So the principal question everybody in Italy has when travel to the US, what happened when someone without any insurance comes to an emergency department? You work in an emergency department, so I know what happened when an American citizen comes in my emergency department, but I'm not sure what happened in the US.
So in the United States, we have a law called EMTALA, the Emergency Medicine Treatment and Labor Act, which says that anybody who presents to the emergency department must receive care regardless of their ability to pay. And as an emergency physician, I often don't know if somebody has health insurance or not. In the emergency department, I often have no way of knowing. So if you come to an emergency department in the United States, you will receive care. However, you will unfortunately likely receive a very large bill at the end of that care.
Okay. Quindi, so I will translate in Italian because this is the main question. So, quindi, se finite in un ospedale negli Stati Uniti, verrete curati, anche se non sanno se potete pagare o no, è chiaro che vi arriva la fattura poi alla fine. Mi sembra giusto, no, Leslie, che questo sia la fine. So, Leslie knows both system because she lives here some month per year, and so she knows both the system, and it's nice. So, on my perspective, when I've seen American citizen in the emergency department in Italy, I've seen at the end of when they have to be discharged, they are asking or looking someone to pay. And we really have no idea how to process this kind of stuff. So everybody looked like with a questioning face and said, what? So this is very different. Then I think the administration will send the bill, but the bill is very different. So I always hear Leslie complaining for her medical bills because sometimes she has some trouble. So she called me, what I have to do? So sometimes she went to the, where did you go last time?
We took my son to the emergency room, and it wasn't anything serious, but as a mother, you always want to err on the cautious side, and it turned out all he needed was some sugar water. And it was over $400, and Roberta was telling me, just give him a glass and tell him to drink.
So it's nice. It's nice to see the different system. Okay, so we don't have any. Okay, Laura Villa is making some comments. So Samantha is, which system do you prefer? Samantha is asking to Leslie what kind of system. Well, we have problems both sides. In the US, of course, the bill. But they don't experience, as per what I know, waiting list. In our system, you get like universal free care. Well, free is not free because you pay through taxes. So our taxes are higher, but you have the coverage of everyone. So regardless of work, regardless of employee status, etc. So from your first day, your very first day on the earth to the last one, you can use the healthcare system. But the other problem is doctors are paid less, and so there is a great competition. Our universal healthcare system is slightly changing during the year. So we are increasingly seeing also the private market that is coming. And so it's building like a third spaces for healthcare. That is still like sustainable, I think, at this time. So in the US, it is different. But Leslie, you can answer the question right now. Just
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the main difference is a difference of philosophy. In the United States, hospitals, clinics, anything related to the medical world is always seen as a business unit. Whereas in Italy, the medical world, the hospital, it's never seen as a business unit, something that has to churn out turnover, some profit to cover expenses, etc. And you can see it in how sometimes the medical personnel orders exams, tests. Like whenever we go, oh yeah, we'll take an MRI, and for example, in Italy, it's not, nobody knows how much an MRI costs. And the first thing, and usually a US patient goes, wow.
Yeah, Leslie, and this is a very great problem in Italy, because probably in the US, each citizen knows the value of the healthcare system a little bit. So they know that it costs. In Italy, everybody wants care, wants examination, so also inappropriate things, but everybody don't have the awareness about the cost and the managing. So I've seen this when I've been working for this cruise line, this cruise company in the US, that with the contribution for your pension. So in the US, philosophy is up to you using the 401k and matching system of the contribution. In Italy is mandatory. So you have this percentage that is on your side and a percentage on the employer. So you can't really choose to do it or not to do it. And the very first thing they told me was, okay, it's up to you. And I said, wow. It's a great freedom. So, but it is a different perspective, of course, the social system. What do you think, Rick?
It's very different, and the United States places a lot of emphasis on personal responsibility. Yeah. And we are in constant flux here in the United States, where there's a large push for nationalized single-payer healthcare. And with the recent political changes and changes in the political landscape, combined with what we've seen from the COVID pandemic, I anticipate that we're going to see a lot of change in healthcare in the United States in the months to years to come.
Okay. So I've heard many doctors who says, okay, we need a universal coverage because at the end, healthcare is a matter of everyone. So it's more or less our philosophy. But I think we, of course, are experiencing the problem of not awareness of the population. Okay, so our people are not aware of anything in healthcare, and your people are more, well, you say responsible. Each one is responsible for his own. Is it correct? So this is the philosophy. Okay, so probably like middle way could be the right.
Yeah, I think so.
Because, well, when I've seen the bill doing my duty as emergency physician, the bill, I desired to have this kind of bill to an Italian patient that comes to the ER, because I said, well, this is like a great learning about how the system works. But it's not
and if I may one more, one of the different philosophies also of the two medical systems is what Dr. Pescatore said before. It is, in the United States, it is absolutely linked to employment. Your health insurance, your health coverage comes through your employment, to the point that if you, by chance, become unemployed or out of work, that is the first thing on your mind is, how will I be covered if something happens to me or my family or my kids? That is one of the greatest differences I think there are in between the two systems. I don't think there is anybody in Italy who, if they ever come unemployed or if they have been unemployed, ever worries, oh, what if I break a leg? How will I go to the hospital and, and pay and be able to cover the expenses?
Okay. So last question from YouTube. So he's asking, Rick, to you, what is the matter of nurse practitioner and all these new non-medical professional that practice? So is there any problem with this PA, NP, etc.? Well, because in Italy we have some trouble, mostly in the emergency medical system, in the pre-hospital emergency medical system, with some kind of border between duties of each profession. So I see that is slightly more fluid in the US, as my impression is this one.
Yeah, more and more nurse practitioners, nurse anesthetists, and physicians' assistants are rising to independent practice all throughout the United States. This is an area of concern for physicians for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that physician groups feel that the extensive training of a physician brings a specific level of competency and knowledge that's needed to be at the head of any care team. Certainly, PAs and NPs are valuable clinicians that have a place in our healthcare system. However, we have to better define those roles here in the United States, lest we see an erasure and a confusion of the roles that are rightfully assigned in the medical hierarchy.
Okay, so I think you are experiencing the same problem as we do. So we have, the problem in our country is slightly different. So I think in the US, the problem is maybe that you don't have enough doctors. Is it correct? And so many other professions. So we have the opposite problem. So we have enough doctors, so graduated, but we didn't plan well. The previous government didn't plan well the number of postgraduate training. So we are full of doctors, fully licensed, but with no specialty. So they can't access the healthcare system, the public healthcare system. And so to fill this position, they are trying to use other non-medical professionals. But you have to change the regulation and to train all these doctors. So if you are missing emergency physician, you have to train this physician because you have it and they are licensed to practice. So this is not acceptable on the medical point of view in our country. But I think the situation is similar for different reasons. Okay, so we are going to the end. I think it's almost 1 hour. We had a lot of viewers and many people will see this later on. So thank you everyone for listening. If you want to say something else, you are free to go. So you are free to speak whatever you want.
Well, I have to say thanks so much for having me. It's been wonderful as always to speak with you, collaborate with you. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, your friends, and all your followers and viewers.
Yeah. So no, thank you for your time, your patience. I hope Julia appeared on time for you because it was the maximum I was able to do today. So, and I'm very happy Julia accepted to join as former minister. Not every day a minister comes up during a stream just to say hi and thank you. And so I will say to all my Italian friends and followers, all the doctors, Rick is a fantastic medical educator. So I always follow his video lesson teaching and all the events. I've been in the US. I plan to fly to the US for some training and to say hi to Leslie and some other friends, but I wasn't able to fly, of course, because of this pandemic. So hopefully I will be back soon to the US. And so, ragazzi, seguitelo su YouTube, seguitelo su Twitter, pubblica sempre delle bellissime cose. E soprattutto ha anche un blog, un podcast su iTunes e credo anche also on Spotify is your blog, your podcast.
Yeah, course. All the things.
You have a monthly scheduling, is it
Yes,
correct?
Yes, sir.
Ok, so questo bellissimo post ve lo metterò nei commenti, so I will put in the comments below for everyone who wanna listen. I always listen his podcast when I'm moving to workplace and coming back, so I have time during driving to hear everything and like practice the English. So thank you so much, everyone. So we go backstage.